Spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plains. Shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, that sees beyond the years, and our beloved cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Good morning. I'm John Van Scoik, Vice Chair of the Brookline Select Board. Our chair, Bernard Green, would be here today if not for an unanticipated medical issue. So I want to just tell Bernard, and I'm sure he's going to be watching this on tape, Bernard, get well soon, and that's a message from all of us here today. And I also wish to acknowledge the presence of Police Chief Jen Pastor and Fire Chief John Sullivan, and the various members of the Brookline Police Department and the Brookline Fire Department who are here today, some of whom will be taking part in these ceremonies. And I would like everyone who's here today to let's get things started by showing them our appreciation for what they do with just a quick round of applause. To those in today's audience, thank you for joining us for this 22nd anniversary of the events of September 11th, 2001. Our thanks also to Brookline Interactive Group for once again producing the video version of today's event for people to watch from home. Today's speakers will include Town Administrator Chaz Carey, State Representative Tommy Vitolo, Firefighter Peter Moyer, whose brother died on September 11th, followed by Representative Bill McGregor of the 10th Suffolk District, and we will also hear from Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey. As well, Senator Cynthia Cream has offered taped remarks that will be part of the YouTube production from today. No later than 9:45, Fire Chief John Sullivan will begin the Fire Department's solemn remembrance ceremony. It will include a moment of silence to acknowledge the firefighters who died on September 11th. To begin, please allow me to offer some brief personal thoughts on this day. And I'm going to start by showing this cap, which I tend to wear it around town a lot, probably too much. It's my cap from my days at New England Cable News. My own connection to the events of September 11th, 2001 is that I was a producer for New England Cable News at the time, responsible for nightly news and talk show. I learned of the initial reports of a plane being flown into one of the World Trade Center towers as I was on my way to NECN's offices in Newton. By the time I arrived, the word around the newsroom was all hands on deck. We would be transitioning to live news coverage indefinitely. I began going through my list of contacts to recruit local officials and academic experts to drive to our studios in order to try to make sense of what we were witnessing on our screens. We watched, and our viewers watched, as two planes, hijacked by terrorists, flew into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. As well, we learned of a third plane that was crashed into the Pentagon, and a fourth plane that crashed in rural Pennsylvania after the crew and passengers attacked the terrorists on board. Cameras caught the horrifying collapse of the Twin Towers, and later, the desperate, grueling effort to retrieve bodies from the rubble. As the hours of TV coverage turned into days, one of the early guests to arrive at the station at my urging was Congressman Barney Frank. And as I ushered him from the newsroom to the studio for the first of his many live interviews, I couldn't stop myself from blurting out this question. Congressman Frank, are we going to be all right? 22 years later, we are still hurting, and we are still healing. Today, as I ask myself that question, are we going to be all right? I would give the same answer that Congressman Frank gave that day. Yes, we are going to be all right. And that's because in the days following September 11th, 2001, we as a nation proved we could still summon heroes, those who sacrificed their own lives by rushing into burning skyscrapers to rescue fellow human beings whose names they would never know. Other heroes breathed soot and ash and toxic fumes and sacrificed years of life expectancy by pushing through smoking rubble to retrieve bodies from the pit where once stood the World Trade Center towers. Today is all about once again acknowledging those heroes and thanking them. As long as we can summon heroes like them, we will be all right. As well, today is about remembering the 2,996 people who were killed in the September 11th attacks. On this occasion, here at Fire Station 5, let's particularly remember the 412 emergency workers who died in New York, including 343 New York City firefighters and fire department paramedics and a chaplain, 37 Port Authority police officers, 23 New York City police officers, and 8 private emergency medical services technicians and paramedics. But let us also remember the names of the people with Brookline ties who died that day. Christine Barbuto, a Brookline resident and a buyer for the TJX companies. Kellyanne Booms, a Brookline resident. John Brett Cahill, born in Brookline, but a resident of Wellesley. Manuel Manny Del Valle, Jr., a 1988 graduate of Brookline High School and a New York City firefighter assigned to Engine Company Number 5, one of the first fire companies to respond. He responded even though his tour of duty had ended. Gerard P. DeWange, a New York City firefighter who was one of the first firefighters to respond on Ladder 3. He died that day, alongside 12 firefighters from his station, trying to save people in the towers. Gerard Dewan was a West Roxbury native and third-generation firefighter. Gerard and Maureen Gilligan's brother, Jack Dewan, served for many years as a Brookline firefighter until he retired. He now resides in Florida. Carlton Fife, a Brookline resident. Lisa Gordenstein lived in Needham, but graduated from Brookline High School in 1977. Daniel C. Lewin, a Brookline resident. He was reportedly stabbed on Flight 11 as it was hijacked making him the first victim of the attacks. Brookline's special program today will begin with Brookline's town administrator, Chaz Carey. But first, I would like everyone to pause for a moment of reflection in honor of those names just read, which will be followed by taps from our trumpeter, John Bassett. Thank you, John. And now, Chaz Carey, our town administrator, please come to the podium.
Thank you, Vice Chair Van Square, members of the community here today. I'm Chaz Carey. I'm Brookline's town administrator. This was actually the first event that I attended as town administrator last year, 4 days before I took the job officially. I'm coming up on my first anniversary with this community. It means a lot to have this be one of the first events to introduce me to this community, and it means even more to be here today at the 1 year mark and to see the community return to celebrate this, the 22nd anniversary of the attacks of September 11th. I have a personal connection, which is why I've been asked to speak. My uncle, Frank Brennan, worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, which was on the 105th floor, one of the towers, and his body was never recovered, or to be more specific, bits and pieces of his body were recovered repeatedly, but his full body was never found. And it is quite something to go through the repetition of the day, to have your family notified again and again that something has been located, a piece of someone who is no longer with you, and to go through the process of grieving again. Frank was my mother's eldest brother, the eldest child of a family of 6, born in Brooklyn, New York. He was 50 when he was killed, and he's very much a product of his age. Frank Brennan Jr. and his father's name, never went to college, was a high school basketball star, was a bouncer on Long Island, was discovered by the owner of the nightclub that he worked at to be pretty good with figures, wound up inheriting the nightclub from the owner when the owner decided to retire, wound up managing 3 or 4 nightclubs, sold the business, discovered he was pretty good at business, went into investment banking. It's a path that I don't think exists anymore in the modern era. Again, it helped. Frank was attractive, tall, basketball star, white man, Long Island. That kind of person and that kind of pathway can sometimes feel closed to us now. And I wonder what Frank would have thought about the world we live in today. I wonder if in this environment where we are encouraged to confront and question the past in a constructive way rather than turn away from it, I wonder what his thoughts would have been about his family, about the family that he was not close with until towards the end of his life, about his decision not to have children, not to perpetuate some of the issues that were present in his home. I wonder if he might have found a different sort of closure were it not for the events that cut his life short. One of the things that my mother talks about on this day that is very difficult to hear is that she still wonders what the last minutes of her brother's life were like. She was told that he probably lived for no longer than 2 minutes after the attack, that by smoke inhalation would have killed him almost instantly. But in her mind, what bothers her is the sense of terror that he must have felt, not knowing what was going on, to be taken and to not know what it was that had taken him. A true sense of terror. But now, 22 years later, that word, terror, has a different connotation, different meaning. We are engaged today, as we have been since September 11th, in what the government refers to as the global war on terror. Something that has been going on for so long now that there are plans to build a monument to it, a memorial to it on the National Mall. It has been ongoing, and it has been without end. And my view on this is somewhat different, and it's one of those reasons why when people talk about the 9/11 families, I kind of blanch, because no one ever calls me. No one ever asks my opinion. I find it difficult to believe that we can wage war on an emotion. Terror is an emotion. Terrorism is a tool, a weapon that has been used across the world, a weapon that we have seen from the Troubles in Northern Ireland, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in Israel, to, yes, the events of 9/11. Terrorism knows no creed. It is a mindless tool, a tool of cowardice and death, but it is not an enemy. In order to win a war against an emotion, and in order to stop a tool of violence from being used, rather than meet it with fear, incomprehension, we must meet it with understanding. We must know what causes it, and we must fight the root causes that lead to those places. Rather than be reactionary, we must be proactive. We must reach down to the environments that cause terrorism, and we must stop it there. And so my charge to all of you today in this environment is that when you encounter someone who is afraid, who has that reactionary feeling, who is so afraid of something or so terrorized by something that they may lash out, that they may turn to extremism and violence as a form of comfort, I encourage you to try and embrace that person before they reach that point, before they give in to despair and hatred. If you know someone in your life who has been so taken by these last few years of rhetoric and divisiveness, they seem lost to you, please reach out to them. Please help them not reach the point that so many others have reached, to reach for that tool of violence and fear. And only then, I think, will we as a community truly overcome a war on terror. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of your community.
Guess who's taller? I'm going to leave the mic where it is because Tommy Vitolo's coming next. But we're just going to pause briefly to try to amp up the volume a tiny bit on the speakers. Tommy, come on up.
Good morning. Good morning. Better? I can't swallow the microphone, so that's the best I can do. You can see I didn't print any comments, and so if I take a wrong turn, I apologize. My comments are actually going to go south. What I want to talk about for just a few minutes is a trip I just took with my son, and then I'll make it make sense at the end, as a good speech sometimes does. My son and I just got back on Monday morning from a 2-week trip down south. Now, my son is 12, and we spent a full 2 weeks on a road trip that included North Carolina, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. And we spent almost the entire time doing things that are remarkably American. We spent a lot of time driving in a pickup truck, no less. We spent a lot of time at football games, and we spent a lot of time eating high-calorie, fatty, wonderful Southern food. All uniquely American, I would argue. And in our travels throughout the South, we opened our eyes a little bit to more of America than we see on our walk from our home on University Road to Pierce School or to the high school. And when we were in Orlando at the Florida State-Louisiana State game, which was a great football game, I would add, the diversity in the stadium was remarkable. We had Cubans and Puerto Ricans and other Latinos and Latinas. We had black families and white families, some of the white families wearing vineyard vines, others wearing matching mullets. And we had folks on active duty who got a weekend away, and we had Vietnam vets and everything in between. And it was, again, a wonderful display of America. When we were in Mississippi, we went for a swim in the Pearl River, which has alligators, and that's okay. And it also has boats with Let's Go Brandon flags and Confederate flags. The Confederate flags are less okay, in my view. In any case, we were reminded that America is a lot bigger than our neighborhood and a lot more diverse than our neighborhood. And importantly, that those millions of people whose states we visited, they also love their families and their communities and their country, even if their path through life brings them to different ideas about how we should govern and how we should represent those ideas. And so, since I believe that 9/11 is in fact our only uniquely American day of thought, holiday, remembrance, I think it's worth remembering that 9/11 is in fact 9/11 for every single American, including those who don't look like us, who don't think like us, who don't prioritize in the same way we do. And it means just as much to them as it does to us. And so I hope that today, as we think about those who sacrificed everything to save others, those who were simply murdered for some terrible ideas, let's also remember that every single American cares about that and is deeply troubled by that. And those who were old enough all cried on that day, not just those who think just like us. Thank you.
Tommy's used to this stuff, and he understands the importance of standing real close to the mic, so I'll just draw that to the attention of our next speakers. I failed in my duty at the beginning to acknowledge at least one person and a couple others, and I'm going to just quickly ask Paul Warren, raise his hand. He's here, a colleague on the select board. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. And if there are any town meeting members here, raise your hands while I silence my phone. Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker is going to be Peter Moyer, brother of a firefighter hero of September 11th. And he is then going to, without any interruption from me, transition to introducing the next speaker after that, who will be Representative Bill McGregor.
Thank you for your time. I grew up with Manny. I look from left to right, and 90% of you I have name recognition and an interpersonal relationship with, if not a friendship. I came to this town on August 20th, 1984, in a U-Haul truck. And the commonality as time goes on with me and Manny is the woman who birthed us, our mother. Some of your first thoughts in life are in regards to your mother. Maybe when you pass on, you may think of your mother. When I think of my brother Manny, I often think of my mother. Now, a lot of you may know my mother and met my mother. She stands about 5'4" tall. Not born around here, but has made this her home. Sometimes I ask my mother, where do you want to live the last chapter of your life? She says, right here in Brookline. Right here with these people. Right here with these people that have embraced me. Right here with these people that I know. My mother fed me every meal till about the age of 15. I used to sit down with my father and my brother, elbow to elbow at the dinner table. And in retrospect, my mother was the fearless leader of that family. Again, she stood 5'4". At the age of 15, my mother ran away from home, from an abusive family in New York. Without a cell phone, puzzled her whole family together, took care of all her siblings, took care of all of us. Never has a bad word to say about anybody. You go into my mother's house, you get a home-cooked meal. Show up anytime, right there on Walnut Street. Many of you know her. And to this day, when I look in the mirror, I see a little bit of her. You know, together, we're everything. As one, I'm just one, and when I'm disjointed, I'm really nothing. My brother was born to be a firefighter. I was born to be a firefighter. I'm going to be a firefighter in this town until I retire. I have the mannerisms of a fireman. I have a handshake of a fireman. I'll lay my life down for anybody. Anybody here. You go, we go. That's the attitude that Manny had. A consummate team player. A man that on his day off said, I'm with this team. I'm a fireman. Let's go to work. On January 1st of 2021, there was an ice rescue at the Brookline Reservoir. Some of you that are in the police or fire department may recall this rescue. It was one dog and two people. It was a 6-month-old dog who was distracted by some Canadian geese. There are multiple layers of ice. Dave Taylor from Dispatch calls it in. It's a level 3 response with the rescue. On that day is Group 4. There are 4 groups. 28 members of the Brookline Fire Department are working at all times under one chief that has to be there 24 hours a day, a deputy. That's how things work. Together we are everything. We show up with a rescue, with a boat. On Group 4 that day was Olivia Mascara, Paul DeBro, Fran Mulkern, Sean Guilfoy. The deputy that day was Kyle McGeckran. Deputy in training was Deputy David Randolph. Lieutenant in training, D. Differ. We went to the reservoir. The police had already staged the area and had 2 civilians held back from going into the water. We sent an ice rescue sled out 35 feet into the reservoir, but what we didn't realize is that at the Brookline Reservoir, a current was pushing out from the Quabbin Reservoir, and ice, like a tectonic shift, was creating a mountain of friction. Now there's no propeller on this boat, so it's all grit. Nick Feener and Olivia Mascara were immediately asked to put the Scuba Steve outfits on and get out there. They go out there in a rescue sled, and the dog is going further and further out, but they're determined. They go grab this dog. It takes a while. There's all types of ropes involved, bowing knots, figure 8 knots. All these knots have to be on a bight, which means secured. That day, the dog was rescued. The people made it. We go back to quarters, to Station 1. People have about 20 minutes to shower. There's no accommodations made. Just a simple head nod. And you did a good job. That's all the people get. That's all they want. They're firemen. This fire department is for whoever comes in this community. We're here for you 100%. We're less than 4 minutes away. Now we have an electrical system that times us. So we're going out the door, we're actually being timed. So we're very mindful of the time getting to people. This year I was fortunate also to plant a tree in Brookline. I'm part of a committee that plants trees for the people. This year, Deborah Doyle, Corey Cromartie, and Marcos Renderos helped me to plant a tree. Actually, we all planted a tree, it wasn't me. And over in that area, I look back, and my mother and Peggy Cromartie were sitting under a tree. They're both diabetic, they gotta eat by 12. And I hear them in the background. You guys gonna plant that tree? Look out for the kids. Make sure the kids get water. Make sure nobody's left behind. And I can still hear her in the back of my mind. She's still putting in work. Still my mama. My mom still has me in check. So you think about the actions of a man, you think about actions of Manny, and the big reflection of his actions is there's a causation and a correlation between his mother, who is my mother, and him. So props to my mother as well as Manny. I went to Driscoll School as a kid. And I was in special ed. I was like the last kid to learn how to read. I'm up here making a speech in front of all of you. And I was in class with some pillars of the community, like Nasser Khan and Dennis Sear and Bill McGregor. This building was built in the 60s. And that plaque right there is Bill McGregor's grandfather, Rob McGregor. So I'm going to introduce him. He's a new elected official. I'm very proud of him. Very proud to be here. I thank you for your time and your endless commitment. You're committed to us. We're committed to you. Together, we are everything. So Bill, come on up. Thank you for your time.
He always makes it hard to follow him. It's beyond an honor to be able to speak at this remembrance. I'm grateful to be here alongside my good friend, Representative Tommy Vitolo, and the select board members, town meeting members, and all of you to honor the sacrifices made by first responders and their families over 25 years ago. My name is Bill McGregor, and I'm the newly elected state representative from 10th Suffolk District. And as some of you may know, I'm from West Roxbury, but Brookline has always been a second home for me. Over 35 years ago, which might be hard to believe because I look so young, I went to Driscoll School out in Washington Square, and I studied, I played sports, made practical jokes with lifelong friends who are now on the Brookline Fire Department. That includes Lieutenant Nasha Khan. That also includes firefighter Joey Mandra. It also includes my brother, Rob McGregor, who's also lieutenant on this department. And this fire station carries so much meaning for us because of our grandfather who died in the line of duty over 50 years ago. My brother not only has the same job as him, he carries his name and his badge number. And his plaque hangs right over there, as Pete mentioned earlier. And I also went to school with another dear friend, who we just heard from, firefighter Pete Moyer. His brother, Manny DeValle, also became a firefighter with the FDNY and was working on September 11th, 2001, where he was killed in the line of duty along with several other first responders. September 11th was and still is one of the most tragic days in American history. We all can remember where we were, what we were doing, and how we felt when the two planes hit the Twin Towers. I know we also remember the incredible awe we felt for the courageous first responders and continue to have every time they go on a call. This is a day to remember those heroes that we lost, but to also remember the heroes that are standing among us, which are here, a lot of them are here right now. Thank you, everyone, for putting this remembrance together, and I really appreciate you letting me speak, and thank you to all the heroes that are here today.
And the final speaker is District Attorney Michael Morrissey.
Most of us of a certain age recall where we were when we heard of the attacks on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the plane that would go down in Pennsylvania. It was a special election day in Quincy, where I live, as a vote was underway to replace Joseph Moakley, the longtime congressman, a World War II veteran who had died in office, for whom the federal courthouse in Boston is named. There was a poll worker who asked me if I knew what had happened, and like many, I found my way to a television set to watch as the world changed before our eyes. I would later learn that our neighbor's daughter, an American airline employee, had swapped shift with another flight attendant who had died on the California flight. A childhood friend lost a cousin, a traitor, in one of the towers. I was serving as state senator in Abington when that town came together to support Christy Coombs, whose husband Jeff was on the first plane to hit the towers. And Susan McKay, age 44, a lifelong Quincy resident, a classmate of my brother's, and whose parents and family we knew from growing up at the Squantum Yacht Club, was a TJ Maxx employee that was killed on a California flight. In the days that followed, the country came together in a way that I had not seen as an adult. Perhaps not since the days after John F. Kennedy, a son of Brookline, was killed in Dallas. We've come through so much as a community and as a world that clear September day. We felt that the world was changing, although we couldn't have predicted how. The land wars that followed the attack on September 11th have come to a close, but not before thousands and thousands of young men and women came home forever changed, and the national life and national story of other countries was also changed. Legal and firefighting organizations in New York estimate that as many first responders have now died from cancer and other complications of going to the site at Ground Zero as there were people killed that day in the explosions and collapse. We live with the legacy of how we responded, the victories and the mistakes, every day, even 22 years later. My wish, as someone who spent his career building community and working to solve problems, is we hold on to that moment when we, as a nation, remember that we have the ability to come together in face of trouble. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our speakers today. Thanks to those of you who are here. This concludes the first part, but only the first part of the program. The next part of the program is going to be under the supervision of our Fire Chief, John Sullivan, and he's going to take over from me in terms of handling the duties of MC. John Sullivan, thank you so much.
Thank you, John, and thanks to everybody for coming out and being part of this ceremony. You know, one of the things that struck me today in a really positive way is all of the speakers spoke about family. Every one of them that was up here talked about the families of the victims who were killed on that day, including the first responders. Town Administrator Carey, thank you for sharing that personal story about your uncle. That's what this day is all about. This day is about remembrance. On the fire department, we have our ceremony every year in remembering the firefighters that were killed in the line of duty that day, but also all the firefighters that responded. Another plane hit the Pentagon. Another plane went down in Pennsylvania. Every one of those firefighters that responded to that multiple tragedies were all heroes, but you would never hear them say that about themselves. All of the folks that are here in blue today, police, fire, EMS, are all heroes, but you're never going to hear them say that about themselves. Firefighter Moyer spoke about his family and his mom and the special connection that he has with his brother and that their love of the fire service. That commitment that is made on a daily basis is really, it's a conscious yet a subconscious commitment. There's not anybody that pins the badge on in the morning before they go to work and says, you know, I'm gonna have a really bad day and I may not come home. Can't think like that. But our families do. One of the things that I learned very quickly after a tragedy that I lived through back in Worcester when I was back there in 1999 was the impact that our job has on our families every day that we don't consciously think about. And we need to acknowledge the families of the firefighters and police officers who have that same sacrifice. They may not be putting the badge on and standing in front of whatever befalls them that day, whether it's a police officer or a firefighter, but they're living it. And they have that same commitment to the community that we do through their husbands and wives and uncles and fathers. It's important for us to make sure that we're not only recognizing the first responders today, but also the families and the victims of the 9/11 tragedy, the 3,000 plus victims that were killed that day, the people in the Pentagon that were killed that day. Luckily, the plane that landed in Pennsylvania didn't take any civilian casualties outside the people that were on the planes, but we need to remember them as well. But our ceremony here today for the fire department is about the firefighters who responded that day, including the 343 firefighters and police officers and EMTs that were killed at the 9/11 in New York City. It's really impossible to describe the scene of that tragedy. There's no way for me, even though I ended up there, there's no way for me to describe it to you. But I will describe this. One of the jobs that I had while I was down in New York was to take the families of the firefighters to the scene because they weren't allowed to get close to that and their loved ones were still in the pile. And we picked them up at Marine 6 in Brooklyn and took them on a boat around the tip of Manhattan to Battery March Park, and then we walked them up to the scene of the tragedy. I will never forget being with those families and being that representative of the fire department when they were looking for their loved ones and knew in their heart of hearts that the chances of them surviving that were going to be zero. Their sacrifice, our sacrifice every day, is the reason that we're here today. It is one of the greatest honors of my life to be the chief of the Brookline Fire Department and work alongside these men and women, as well as to have the honor to stand next to Chief Pastor and all of the men and women of the police department here in Brookline. And thank you, all of you, for your service every day. I'm humbled and honored to be part of that. At this point, if my timing is right, 9:50, we're going to roll out the vehicles. So, Captain, Lieutenant, if you could roll out the vehicles, get them in place for the memorial service. And as they do that, I'd just like everybody to take a few moments and think of their families and think of the sacrifice that they make for you and have made for you throughout your lives, and give a moment of thanks to all of your moms and dads, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles who supported you in whatever it is you do, and especially those of the first responders. At this very time, all across America, fire stations are doing the exact same thing. This tribute to those who are lost in 9/11/2021 is occurring on every fire station across America at this time. So in California, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. Or it's close to 7, I guess, now. But every firefighter is out there doing their thing, honoring those who sacrificed and gave the ultimate sacrifice. This time we're going to have the ringing of the bells, the traditional ringing of the bells, 5-5-5, 4 sets of 5 chimes, which was a tradition in New York City when a firefighter was lost in the line of duty. Firefighter Brian Keeley will have the honor of ringing the bells on behalf of our fallen. Lowering of the flag. At this time, one of our youngest on-the-job firefighters, firefighter Josh Del Vecchio, will read the fireman's prayer And the other prayer. Josh, can you come over here and do that from here, Bill? So that everybody can hear you?
Oh God, we remember before you this day our brothers and sisters lost on September 11th, 2001. We thank you for their example of courage and sacrifice. In your boundless compassion, console their families, friends, co-workers, and all who mourn their loss. Give us faith to see in death the gate of eternal life, so that in quiet confidence we may continue our journey and serve with honor, dignity, and courage. Amen. The firefighter's prayer. When I am called to duty, wherever flames may rage, give me the strength to save a life, whatever be its age. Help me embrace a little child before it is too late, or save an older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert and hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently to put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and to give the best in me, to guard my every neighbor and protect his property. And if according to God's will, I must answer death's call, bless with your protecting hand my family, one and all. Amen.
We'll now have the second ringing of the bells. To symbolize our call back to duty, we will now raise the flag back to full staff. I again want to thank everyone for being here and sharing this service with us, especially our counterparts in PD and EMS and all of the folks who allow us to do this work and give us the support to do this work, the representatives, the select board members, District Attorney Morrissey. It is an honor to be part of this ceremony every year, albeit I wish we never had to do it. But it is part of what is important for the long-term benefit, as Firefighter Moyer had so eloquently pointed out, for all of us to grow and to be an essential member of this community and to share that with the folks who are here today and who are here over the air, and let them know that every day the members of the Brookline Police Department, Fire Department are here to serve this community and do whatever it takes to keep our families safe and sound. And thank you again, the firefighters of Brookline, the police officers of Brookline, and to everybody who came here today to witness this ceremony. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you to Chief Sullivan and the Brookline Fire Department for holding today's ceremony. 22 years after 9/11, it's as important as ever that we remember the first responders, including Brookline High graduate Manny DeVale, who died while performing their jobs in the face of unimaginable danger, as well as everyone else who was tragically killed that day. We also think of the first responders who have died from illness or injuries caused by their work at Ground Zero, who are living with extraordinary health challenges stemming from that service. Following the attack of 9/11, My husband and I drove to Brooklyn to be with our daughter, who was living in that neighborhood where several local firefighters had been killed. I'll never forget the shared grief and solidarity of that community. You could feel very profoundly what that loss meant to the fire department and the neighborhood. And you could also feel everyone's desire to be helpful and supportive in any way they could. In the days and weeks that followed the attack, there was a feeling of togetherness, common purpose, and common identity that is really present in an increasingly divided America. September 11th shattered the illusions that nothing like it could ever happen here. And it taught us that we must be vigilant, defending our democracy. After 22 years, our democracy remains under threat from extremism. Unlike 22 years ago, however, the threat is now largely coming from within our country and not from abroad. In the past few months alone, homegrown terrorists, motivated by white supremacy and anti-Semitism, have carried out multiple shootings that have killed and injured scores of American citizens. Like the September 11th attacks, these shootings are an assault on our safety, our freedom, and our values of tolerance, equality, and inclusion. We like to say that we will never forget September 11th or the painful lessons we learned that day, that our democracy is as fragile as it is precious, that extremism must be taken seriously, and that we are stronger when we are united. To truly remember 9/11 and honor the thousands of innocent Americans who lost their lives, we must apply those painful lessons to the threats we face today. We must come together across political and cultural divisions to confront domestic extremism and safeguard democracy. The country, Massachusetts, and Brookline were changed forever on September 11th, 2001. By coming together today to remember, mourn, and celebrate the lives of family, friends, and neighbors we lost, I hope that we will continue to heal, and I hope that we will also commit ourselves to defending our democracy and our values together.
I'm State Representative Kevin Honan, a member of the Brookline Legislative Delegation, and I am honored to speak to you. Today we solemnly remember the events of September 11, 2001. We all know it was a day that changed the life of our entire country and the lives of so many, including 8 Brookline families who were directly impacted. We remember those who lost their lives, those who came away injured and hurt, and who remain so today. We stand with the survivors and family members who are still among us, our neighbors, firehouses, police stations, and hospitals everywhere. And while at times it may seem so long ago, we must always stay vigilant in our remembrances and tributes so that future generations will always remember that day and the sacrifice of so many. Thank you for being here and allowing me to join you this way. God bless our country, our first responders, and all of you.
When you called me and said, let's meet for coffee, I looked forward to seeing you. I always do. But I never expected to be sitting here listening to such a heartbreaking story. Anything you need, I'm here for you. And if it helps you at all, I found this to be true. I've seen where you are. The skies won't always be threatening. We must keep remembering the rain will soon be done. Just like the sun, you're gonna shine. You're gonna shine. It was years ago, before I knew you, something I held so dear disappeared, and it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Tell that dark voice in my head I'm not listening to you. My choices were just like yours are now. Lay down and cry, or believe somehow. Clouds only have so much rain. I know it's coming down hard on you now, like it will never end. I've seen where you are. The skies won't always be threatening. We must keep remembering the rain will soon be done. Just like the sun, you're gonna shine. You're gonna shine. Clouds only have so much rain. I know it's coming down hard on you now, like it will never end. I've seen where you are, and the skies won't always be threatening. We must keep remembering the rain will soon be done, and just like the sun, you're gonna I am your child. Wherever you go, you take me to. Whatever I know, I learned from you. Whatever I do, you taught me to do. I am your child, and I am your chance. I am your child. Whatever will come from me. Tomorrow is won by winning me. Whatever I am, you taught me to be. I am your hope. I am your chance. I am your child. Whatever I am, you taught me to be. I am your hope. I am your chance. child. I have come from so far away, down the road of my own mistakes. In the hope you could hear me pray, oh Lord, keep me in your reach. Oh, how I've longed through these wasted years to outrun all the pain and fear, turn to stone from my uncried tears, and now it's your grace I see. Love won't compromise. It's a gift. It's a sacrifice. My soul renewed and my spirit free. With you I found my peace. Oh, wondrous child of whom the angels sing, feel my joy, know my suffering. Shining star, let this light you bring be so bright that I may believe, and my way will not be lost from now on, till that river's crossed, my soul renewed and my spirit free. With you I found my peace.